Tell you something. The United States of America is the most powerful nation on earth.
America entered World War II as just one of the great military powers, but it ended World War II as the dominant force in the world.
America spent $778 billion on defense. That's around 39% of global military spending.
No nation attacks us directly or our allies because they know that's the path to ruin.
Hello everyone. If asked someone, which is the most powerful country in the world? The answer will be USA, right? Without any doubt or second thoughts. Well, that's true, as USA's GDP is around $22.99 trillion, which is far more than rest of the countries. It is even higher than the second and third world economies combined, with China $17.7 trillion and Japan $4.9 trillion. USA also has the most powerful army in the world, with an estimated of $778 billion defense budget, which is by far the greatest in the world, which is more than the next 9 countries' military budget combined. The economy and the military have helped USA to become the most powerful country in the world. But do you think it will remain the same, or there will be some other players who will dethrone USA? Well, there are some nations which are now directly challenging USA, and have the power to dethrone USA in near future. Let's find out more about it.
This is your friend, with OTT. If you like to help to decide which topics I cover, let me know the topics in the comments section. Make sure you vote this up, so that YouTube knows you're enjoying what you're watching, and if you're new to this channel, do hit the subscribe button, and also hit the bell icon for all notifications.
Russia and China have joined hands for their same aim for their nation, and common differences with USA and the West. Both Russia and China think that the Russia-China alliance is the answer to their long quest for the throne of most powerful nation in the world. The Russia-China alliance have come up with many master strokes for taking down the mighty United States. China has labeled Russia as its most important strategic partner, despite rising pressure from the US and European Union. China's foreign minister, Wang Yi, stressed a rock-solid relationship with Russia, and reaffirmed the vast cooperation opportunities for the two nations. China and Russia established their strategic partnership in the 1990s, and have signaled their growing convergence regularly. China-Russia trade is prime example of their growth towards each other. Exports to Russia have increased by 41% in January and February 2022, compared to the last year. It was the quickest rate among China's main trading partners, beating trade with European Union and the United States. Russia is also China's second largest source for imports. The Unified Front is against liberal democracy, and opposes externally supported regimes. NATO too did not formally recognize the threat posed by a Russia-China alliance until 2021. Both Russia and China have planned invasion. While Russia has invaded Ukraine in early February 2022, China is threatening to do so with Taiwan. As I have explained in my previous videos, how and why Russia invaded Ukraine, and how now China is threatening to enter Taiwan. In both situations the US, EU, and NATO tried to interfere, but all were sided by Russia and China. In a statement on Russia-Ukraine crisis, China's foreign minister has asked the West to handle complicated challenges with calm and reason, rather than throwing fuel to the fire. He urged the involved parties to promote long-term peace and stability, and establish a balanced, effective and long-term European security architecture. While the West are comparing Ukraine-Taiwan situation, both China and Taiwan, for various reasons, have opposed the comparison. China rejects the Taiwan and Ukraine's comparison, since Taiwan is a local matter for China. Despite having its own democratically elected government, Beijing considers Taiwan part of China, to put Taiwan back under Beijing's direct authority. Both these situations are seen by the experts as an indirect war over US and the West. Well, USA being the most powerful country have to play their cards too, in their own way. After Ukraine crisis, Russian goods were banned. Billion-dollar businesses, like Apple and McDonald's, have exited the Russian markets. Russia is banned from SWIFT network, their forex reserve has been frozen, and the West even started forcing other nations to stop trading with Russia. So, with the opposition of the most powerful country on the planet, and the European Union, it was expected that Putin will withdraw from Ukraine, and Russia will accept defeat after the economic turmoil. But you know what? Although Russia got affected, Putin has played the game of thrones of geopolitically so well, that now Europe is facing an economic crisis. But how the West plan is starting to fail, let me explain. Russia possesses massive Siberian fields, making it the world's largest gas producer. Russia is also the world's third largest exporter of oil, behind the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Where UAE stands at 16.13%, Saudi Arabia at 11.54%, Russia stands for 10.53%. Over 5 million barrels of crude oil exports are destined for Europe. It accounts for 8% of total UK oil demand. The US imported around 3% of Russia's oil in 2020. So clearly, you can see here the world's dependency on Russian oil and gas. And as you know, winter is about to set in, and Europe requires a lot of natural gas each winter to power its heaters, and most of this natural gas, 40% to be exact, comes from Russia. So, won't it be a disastrous if Russia were suddenly cut off this supply? Well, Russia just announced that it would be halting its Nord Stream 1 supplies indefinitely. Nord Stream 1 is a 900 kilometers long pipeline, transporting natural gas from Russia to Europe. Russia said that this is due to a technical fault in the pipeline structure. However, EU officials are sure that this is a retaliation against Western sanctions on Russia. So due to the limited supply, natural gas prices are skyrocketing in Europe. The prices have already doubled since September 2021. Annual inflation rate of energy has touched a record high of 41.9%, food inflation has touched 10.4%, and now the GDP growth of 27 countries is slowing down. So it looks like Europe is in for a long cold winter, as Russia is destroying Europe's energy supplies amid these sanctions.
For decades, world trade has been dominated by the dollar.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world.
The SWIFT system, that actually became weaponized by the U.S.
Do you know, the US dollar has been the most powerful currency in the world for 80 long years? In simple words, the US dollar has three superpowers: trust for trade, power to buy oil, and lastly it has all the excess forex reserves invested in its own economy, with $7 trillion in bonds. By the way, these excess dollars are called as petrodollars, and this is where both Russia and China have a problem. But you know what? China and Russia have already come up with a master plan to kill the dollar dominance in the world. And if you look at the past 10 years data, you will see that it's actually working out quite well. In 1999, USD had 71% market share among the global reserve currencies, but in the past 10 years, it has dropped to less than 59%, and in the next 10 years, if this strategy of China and Russia works out, we might see the rise of a new reserve currency, in the form of Chinese yuan, or Russian ruble. China is extremely annoyed at the US for supporting Taiwan, and Russia is already the most sanctioned country in the world. Russia is not able to use its dollar accounts in the US to trade, and at the same time, most of the Russian companies have also been removed from the SWIFT network. So, with two superpowers being bullied by one big daddy, both of them got pissed, and joined hands to take down the mighty United States. As you know, Russia is one of the largest oil and gas producers in the world. So, although Saudi and other countries were selling oil and gas in dollars, Russia punished its unfriendly countries by asking them to buy Russian oil in rubles. So, by default most of the European countries had to buy rubles, in spite of they hating Putin. Which means that, in the payment network diagram, instead of US bank having dollar reserves, all unfriendly countries that bought oil from Russia now had to keep their money in Russian central bank. So, just like dollar reserves held the US economy, the ruble reserves are expected to compromise for the damage to the Russian economy. Which means just like petrodollar, we are seeing the rise of petro-ruble. And if you look at Russia's dollar reserves, they have been preparing to get rid of the dollar since 2014 itself. As if you see this graph, the US treasuries have gone down from $150 billion in 2013 to just $3.98 billion as of 2021. Whereby, the Chinese have given out over generous loans to countries all across the world. There are 165 countries in the world who owe a collective debt of $385 billion to China, and many of these countries have taken so much debt from China that they cannot afford to pay it back, and we saw this very clearly with both Pakistan and Sri Lanka. This is where China's strategic move comes in. Now that China has a leverage over these countries, experts say that China would ask these countries to take and pay back loans in yuan, and in exchange, China could incentivize the scheme by giving them a 1% discount on their interest. In fact, since the inception of the BRI initiative, China has already issued 14 of all its loans in its own currency, without depending on the dollar, and in 2018, the Central Bank of Pakistan had already agreed to conduct their bilateral trade with China in yuan. Even other countries like Myanmar, Cambodia, and Russia are doing the same. On top of that, China is now the largest trade partner with 25 BRI participating countries. So again, the leverage of trade for China is very strong. So you see, with the combination of both trade and debt, China could pressurize these countries to use yuan over the dollar. This way, over time, China could build the strings of 165 nations, and could drastically increase the circulation of yuan. Now the question over here is, all these countries are mostly poor countries, right? So, how would China and Russia get rich countries like England and South Korea to skip the dollar? Well, firstly, Russia is supporting China, and has already turned the Chinese yuan into the reserve currency. So this is a major move, and as far as other countries are concerned, they have something called bilateral currency swap agreement, and this is something that even India is pursuing very strategically, with its ally countries. But what is the bilateral currency swap agreement, and how does it actually work in international trade? Let's try to understand this using a story. Let's say China and UK sign a bilateral currency swap agreement of 5 years, for a value of $1 million. What this means is that China will sell $1 million worth of yuan to UK, and UK will sell $1 million worth of yuans to China. So, after conversion, China will give 6.842 million yuan to UK, and UK will give China £847,250, and they will agree upon the exchange rate to be 8.07. So for 5 years, Chinese central bank can sell these pounds and get US dollars, or it can lend these funds to domestic bank and companies to settle their trade. Similarly, the Bank of England can do the same with yuan. Now, if an English businessman wants to buy €1 million worth of goods from China, if he went by the conventional means, he would have to pay in pounds to the English bank, which will then convert the sum to dollars, then transfer the dollars to the US bank account of China, and then the Chinese bank will transfer the converted sum of yuan to the Chinese businessman. This will incur both a lot of time and lot of cost. But now, the English businessman would simply borrow 1 million yuan from the Bank of England, and directly pay the Chinese bank account in England. The Chinese bank in China would transfer 1 million yuan to the Chinese businessman, and the same thing could be done vice versa. So if you see, two big players can now do international trade without depending on the US dollar. This is how the currency swap agreement works, and after 5 years, both the central banks of UK and China will pay their respective currencies back at the agreed exchange rate of 8.07. So, this way both countries get 3 major advantages. Number 1, both countries can eliminate their exchange risk. Number 2, both countries can use this currency to exchange it for dollars if needed. And thirdly, business in both countries can carry out trade more economically. Most importantly, the dependency on US dollar decreases by a large extent. And guess what? Beijing has signed more than 3 trillion yuan worth of bilateral currency swap deals, with more than 40 countries across the world. This includes 400 billion yuan each with Hong Kong and South Korea, 350 billion yuan each with Bank of England and the European Central Bank, 300 billion yuan with Singapore, and 150 billion yuan with Russia. Since China is the world's largest manufacturer, with almost 20% of the entire world's manufacturing happening in China, they could further leverage this, in order to push these companies to pay in yuan instead of the US dollars. And guess what? Now Saudi Arabia is considering selling oil in yuan, which means if Saudi Arabia starts selling oil in yuan, a lot of countries would rush to buy yuan. And again, like we saw with excess forex being invested in US bonds, this excess yuan would then be invested in Chinese bonds, making the Chinese economy more and more powerful. So, this is how China and Russia are slowly building the currency strategies to overthrow the US dollar. And as we all know, the economy is the main pillar to support the nation. Without the strong economy, a nation like USA can be dethroned. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think Russia and China can really dethrone USA? What do you think? India should play a role into this? Let me know in comments.